My name is Niels Corfield. This is a garden that I help to manage, and we're based in Chapeltown. And this is an example of a permaculture garden. Basically, the design that's been done on the garden has been developed using a system of ecological design called permaculture. The different sort of elements that you see here, like the rainwater, for example, the nursery, and the garden, and further down the composting, they all fit together to make a kind of complementary whole, and that's ultimately what you're trying to create using permaculture design. What we've got in terms of the nursery capacity here is additional capacity to do plantings in public urban spaces, for example, community spaces. I've done a planting outside a community centre in Little London, for example. But it's really to basically create the facility to do a lot more plantings, edible plantings around the city. Okay, so this is another example of what you might classify as a forest garden style planting. So we've got sort of ground cover herbaceous type plants here, like the comfrey, like the fern, for example, growing under a red currant underneath a fairly large quince tree. So this gives you an example of 3 of the layers you might typically find in a forest garden. So the canopy layer, the shrub layer, and then ground cover or herb layer. We're collecting rainwater here. We've got about 5,000 litres of storage, all connected as a single network. This is about 1,000 litres in this particular tank that's then connected by this pipe to an additional 4,000 litres of storage around the back. And we have a resource here somewhere in the region of 100,000 litres of water per year. This growing area here is what some people describe as a herb spiral. The idea is that you're constructing a number of different sort of soil layers, if you like. So you've got a high area that's quite dry, and a lower area that's damper, and an area to the back that would be more shady. So you're in one small space, you're creating kind of 3 or 4 different kind of microclimates. Using the principle of relative location, it's placed close to the house and is therefore planted with frequently used plants. And in this case, it's culinary herbs. I suppose one of the key features that you'll see here is that we have about a dozen raised beds. And they're mounded raised beds. They have logs buried in them. So we dug a big trench, and then we filled with logs anywhere up to sort of 12 to 18 inches in diameter, with all sorts of other bits and pieces, cuttings from the hedge, for example, kitchen waste, all sorts of stuff. The important thing about the burying of the logs, a system that's called Hügel culture, or mound culture, or hill in German, Hügel, is that you're basically locking up a significant amount of carbon and therefore nutrients. Yeah? And it'll basically provide the foundation for food growing in these beds for decades. And it also precludes the need for any further digging or any cultivation of any form. So really we've done a one-time intervention that's now going to shore up the whole of the veg growing on these beds pretty much for as long as you can think about. But I mean, I would say that the logs will take at least 10 years to rot down completely, and they'll rot down into nice friable topsoil. So we're trying to grow quite a wide diversity of different vegetables in the garden, and we're trying to mix plant wherever possible. So for example, in this bed we have leeks and carrots, and also some radishes coming up. So what we're trying to do here is create a sort of diversity of plantings, mixed plantings, what some people call polycultures, for example. So they're able to share the soil, basically. They're able to divvy up the pie more effectively than just one plant. Basically, a monoculture, or a whole field of wheat, is the most competition you can have between plants, because they all have exactly the same root patterns, they all grow to exactly the same height, they all want exactly the same nutrients. So there's no opportunity for them to sort of share some rare minerals, for example, because they're all after the same thing. So what we're trying to do here is create a kind of complementary union of plants using traditional techniques like companion planting that are well known, but also combining what people might also call intercropping. So the idea is you might have 3 or 4 different varieties of plant all growing in the same bed, and that helps not only with the fact that they're able to share nutrients, but also with the fact that they are also able to kind of sort of slot in together. We're looking for systems that can save us time, they can save us energy, they can save us resources by trying to basically bring as many things in-house as possible. And to a certain extent it's the same with the compost. We're trying to create a closed loop system wherever possible. So our kitchen waste goes into the compost, is processed and turned into compost organisms. The organisms go onto the soil or into the soil. They then basically unlock nutrients that are stored in the soil and in the compost, supply them to the plants. The plants are photosynthesizing, they're bringing energy in, they're combining that. We're then eating the plants in the house, and any of those bits that are left over we're bringing back out and either putting into the compost heap or applying directly to the soil. So wherever possible we're trying to keep our resource, our primary resource, which is plant materials in whatever form, biomass, in the system, in the garden. If you want to learn the basics of permaculture, there are a number of courses that get run. We have a sort of initial kind of taster session, which is a 2-day or a weekend introduction to permaculture, and that will give you a sort of an overview of the theories and the principles and the basics behind that. And if you want to take that further, then you can go on to take a 2-week course, and that's a full permaculture design course. It's 6 weekends over 6 months, so a weekend a month. To be well sustainable on one level, I think you need to bring into the household and bring into your home life. They're regular little routines, you know, 5 minutes checking the plants are watered, 5–10 minutes of harvesting, you know, before dinner every night, for example, and putting the compost out. The idea with using permaculture is that you're not having to sort of take on an onerous level of tasks. In terms of lifestyle, what it kind of boils down to is a number of extra little jobs, you know, every week or every day, I suppose.